I think we often forget about the small town. But these places have incredible people and stories and histories as well. I wanted to document these places, help them tell their stories. To do this, I traveled to a nearby town of 1,000 people in central Alaska known as Salcha. Enjoy these interviews, these memories, these stories from Salcha.
My name is Jeff Cook. What I do for a living is I'm retired now, and I finished a career. First of all, I had a 22-year career in commercial real estate, and then I had a chance to go to work for the energy industry in public and government affairs relations, and worked out at the North Pole Refinery. So I retired in July of 2015. Well, I was born in Fairbanks, and I've lived here all my life. Born in Fairbanks on Thanksgiving Day of 1943, but 6 months before I was born, my mom and dad drove from Fairbanks to where Triff's is up on the highway here, and my mom was 3 months pregnant with me, and it took them 2 hours to drive from Fairbanks out here because it was a 2-lane gravel road, and then they walked in for 2 hours and bought the family place that's down the lake 6 months before I was born in 1943, and they bought it from Frank and Hazel Pollock, who had Pollock Airways at the time, but Frank and Hazel sold to what's now Alaska Airlines. So I've been living and coming out here, like I say, all my life, and even before I was born. Well, you know, I come from a family, as far as religion, my parents didn't have a religion of any kind, but my grandfather did in Idaho, and he had my parents sort of take us to the Mormon church, the LDS church, when we were younger, and as we've grown different members, I've got my sister's Catholic, obviously. She was Mormon at one time, and she's just retired as director of Catholic school. We got one brother's a Lutheran, and one brother's very active in the Mormon church. I sort of split my time between St. Mary's of the Lake, which is the Catholic church out here, and I'm actually take care of it for the church and the Mormon church. So, yeah, I mean, I guess part of my spiritual being in religion is just knowing there's something more important and better than myself, and leave this world a better place than we found it. What brought me to Salcha, of course, was my parents buying their place out here, and my dad had grown up in Minnesota, so lakes were a big thing to Dad, and I think he just wanted his family, and I have 2 older brothers, 3 younger sisters, so we were all, born and raised in Fairbanks, and the lake's been a big part of our life. My 2 brothers have places out here. My sister, Nancy, who you met, has the original family place, and my son and nephew both have a place at the lake. So it's been in our blood, and we love it out here. It's been a great place to grow up. Well, my first memories of growing up here, probably 6, 7 years old, was that it was a lot different. There was no electricity, there was no phones. It was a long drive from town. You came along what we called the dike. We usually stopped somewhere on the way out. In later years, it was at the Loveless place to get blocks of ice, because we actually had what were called ice boxes. And so, I remember it was, a lot more primitive. I also remember there were a lot of families, including ours, and maybe a dozen families who lived out here all summer. And my mom didn't drive, so we were out here, and Dad would come out on the weekends, and we chopped wood and hauled water and did all the things you do. And some of our neighbors had generators, but we never did. Electricity came in 1959. So, I just remember it being a lot more, especially when I was younger, a lot more quiet. But then by the time I was a teenager, the lake was busier than it is now. And people say, well, how could Harding Lake be busier back then than now? Well, when I was 16 in 1959, there were all the businesses closed on Saturday, almost all of them. And Sunday, Fairbanks was a ghost town, and there was only hardball baseball in the summer for kids. So there wasn't a lot of, a lot going on. So there were a lot more people out here. And there was a store on the lake, and we'll look later at where that store sat. And there was a series in the News Miner in 1962 that showed a Saturday afternoon at the store, at the Philpott store, that there was probably 30 boats parked along the beach, going into the store. But now, there's just more outlets for people and more activities, Chena Lakes and Quartz Lake, Birch Lake, and now Tanana Lakes, and people have businesses open 7 days a week. So there was that phase, the quiet phase, then the not so quiet phase, and now it's sort of mellowed out, even though there's more cabins. There's more homes, there's more people living out here year round. We have electricity, we have telephones, in fact here we have a pipe, we have high-speed internet from ACS right into the house, So, and the houses are bigger, and a lot of more activity in the winter. We would come out in the winter when I was younger, but there weren't many people out, and it was a little more of a struggle to get here, And so I think the other part of the difference, really, the people who are out here use the places less than when I was growing up. It's amazing, and we'll see some of them where people haven't been to the places, cabins, for years, and it's a shame that there isn't somebody there to enjoy them. Before we built the house we're in now, we moved in 2001. We didn't have all the conveniences, so we'd go drill a hole in the ice and take a toboggan out with a 30-gallon plastic garbage can on it, filled up with water, and we had a Franklin wood stove, and so we kept busy with cross-country skiing and sometimes ice skating if the lake froze smooth. So always lots to do out here. Well, what makes people different, I think, in Alaska in general, Fairbanks and Salchans Pacific, is people really watch out for each other. They know each other, and you might make friends years ago that you don't see often, but when you do, it's like you've been friends all your life. And I think just a more caring, a more creative, a more helpful, and especially when I was growing up, when my parents first got here, you didn't have all the stores and the shipments coming in on a regular basis, and people shared things they may do. If you had building materials left over, you shared them, and I think people are still a lot that way. And if somebody sees that there's a boat stranded out on the lake, a car stranded on the highway, people go and help them. They don't, worry about, is that, am I going to get slowed down or am I going to get hurt? So people just, more outgoing, more friendly. Harding Lake, the first settlers, as far as we know, the first people who had cabins who came out from Fairbanks, it was probably in the 1920s. We'll see one place that I'm sure was there in the 1920s. The name of the lake before 1923 was Salt Jacket Lake, which is named after the Salt Jacket clan of the Athabascan Indian tribe here in the Tanana Valley. President Warren Harding visited Alaska in 1923 to drive the Golden Spike on the railroad, and somebody decided they were going to change the name from Salt Jacket Lake to Harding Lake. But the town site where we sit, my house here is in lot 5, block 6 of Salt Jacket town site, and the road around the lake is Salcha, so we certainly have those ties to Salcha. It wasn't until 1938 that they officially developed, the U.S. government, because we weren't a state yet, obviously, the U.S. government developed blocks 1 through 10 of the Salt Jacket town site. Some people already had cabins on those sites, and they were able to sort of prove up on them by applying and paying the fees, and other people. This place here, the original owner was a family last name Mulrooney, and they bought it from the town site trustee George Parks in 1938, and that's when we think the first cabin went up here. So, and it was later in the 50s, after statehood, the late 50s, early 60s, that the east side of the lake was developed, and people were able to select a lot, and as long as they built on it and put an outhouse on it and did some improvements, they could get the property. A lot of changes back certainly in the 30s and 40s. There were some stores on the lake. Jack and Juanita Boulay had a store down the beach from us. Later on, the Philpott family had a store with a marina and a gas pump at the dock, and you could get boat repairs, and they sold boats, and you had sort of a cafe there. The Girl Scouts for years had a camp down the lake, and they had about 1,000 foot of lake frontage and a camp there, and they decided in the mid-'80s to subdivide that and sell that. And also back at the time there, in the late 40s through the mid-60s, the Army had a camp at the lake, a recreation camp. And of course, up until late 50s, early 60s, Fort Wainwright was Ladd Airfield. So originally the camp was, for the folks there at Ladd that later became Fort Wainwright. They had a very big central building with cabins and a dock. We've got pictures on our Harding Lake website of float planes parked at the dock and boats parked there. And so those things are gone now, and it's changed a lot that way. A few years ago when they were changing Mount McKinley to Denali, and of course McKinley was from Ohio and so was Warren Harding, and I told our U.S. senators, if you really want to anger the people in Ohio, let's not just change the name of McKinley to Denali, let's change Harding Lake back to Salt Jacket Lake, but we haven't done that yet. But I think it might be a good idea to change the name. The highest concentration of assessed residential value in the borough for tax purposes, because a vacant lot, if you had a vacant lot in here somewhere, it would sell for $250,000 to $300,000. Very deep here. We're at 28. We're at 31 feet right here, and it drops off very precipitously from shore. At the deepest point, the lake's almost 200 feet deep. I think they've obviously put new roof and done work, but that's one of the oldest cabins on the lake. Yeah, so this end of the lake is all zoned outdoor recreation. It's really where you see the pike lay their eggs, and a lot of moose and a lot of activity. Here in another few weeks, we'll see a lot of swans here. There's a lot of families out here that the third and fourth generation of the family are here. The Hajdukovich family, the Stepovich family, of course our family. We're into the third and fourth generation.